Fondation Jean-Jaurès.
Penser pour agir.
North Macedonia's path to the EU has been a way of the cross for more than 30 years now. From the mid-90s to 2019, the country has been blocked by Greece because of disputes over North Macedonia's name. To move forward, the country has accepted to change its name. This was the Prespa Agreement. It allowed North Macedonia to join NATO, but excitement was short-lived. In 2020, France and some other countries blocked the start of accession negotiations with North Macedonia and Albania, demanding a reform of the accession process. And that was the new methodology. After that, it was Bulgaria's turn to impose a veto on North Macedonia's, so on revolting claim over culture and history. So North Macedonia's path to the EU has not only been undeservingly difficult and unlucky, it also illustrates some of the EU's key shortcomings and responsibility in a failure to advance its own accession policy. To discuss this topic, I received today Filip Tosevski. Mr. Tosevski, you are State Secretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in North Macedonia. And I am Florent Marciacq, Director of the Observatory des Balkans at the Fondation Jean-Jaurès. Hi, good morning, Mr. Tosevski.
Good morning from Skopje.
So in July 2022, a proposal sponsored by France was put forth to create the conditions in which Bulgaria's veto could be lifted. 1 year so onwards, where do we stand? Can North Macedonia hope for Bulgaria's veto to be lifted anytime soon? Can this one more blockade be unlocked?
Well, the situation is now we have one remaining obligation with what is called French proposal, but actually is the common position of the EU, which has been transferred also in the negotiation framework. We have one remaining condition, that's the constitutional amendment to include the Bulgarian minority in the constitution, which by itself it's not a problem among the holders, but the thing is that the whole discourse has been highly politicized in both countries, and it's more an emotional issue and more as an issue of bargaining between the political actors, also here, but in Bulgaria as well. There is so much intoxicated atmosphere and negative energy after what is called the Bulgarian veto that it's very impossible to make a breakthrough. I mean, in terms of the general support of the wider public, the thing is, this has been such an emotional issue, and it's still posing a huge challenge also for the opposition, but for the government, because as you mentioned, the whole history of blockades at the beginning that we have faced, there is a huge euroscepticism, huge mistrust among the wider public towards the EU, and actually nobody believes anymore that this is going to be the last obstacle on the way to starting the accession negotiations, also in the process of accession negotiations. That's why in the discussions, generally there is a request of some kind of guarantee. Because with the Bulgarian situation, what is perceived among the citizens and wider public is that the Macedonian identity and language has been affected, which is something very emotional for our citizens. And we even now see the situation. The Bundestag just 2 days ago adopted a resolution that recognizes the identity of the Macedonian language, and still that there is a mistrust, because even there not all stakeholders were included. Why the supporters of the CDU, the members of the CDU didn't go. So now there is this kind of discussion, and it's quite challenging, I must say, but the government is really committed into finding a solution. Officially, the proposal will be, for a start of the constitutional amendment procedure, will be launched by the government in the parliament, and we are working with the opposition and with all the relevant stakeholders to make a breakthrough Even the various options were given on behalf of the prime minister during the leaders' meeting that they had with the leader of the opposition, including a wider joint government, various other options. So it's up to the opposition. There was even a proposal of one of the requests, for example, of the opposition. So even our minister and the Albanian ruling party, the main Albanian ruling party, said it was prepared to leave the government temporarily in order all of us to have this common compromise and adopt the constitutional amendments and then move in the next phase of the factual opening of accession negotiations and the first cluster.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned that the rise of Euroscepticism or the mistrust in North Macedonia towards the EU, and indeed the EU has lost a lot of its credibility in North Macedonia. It was supported by 80% of the population, so EU accession membership was supported by 80% of the population in 2014. Now we are so around 60%. So it is the lowest figure ever. And it reflects precisely the kind of blockades which have alliance one after the other, so which you mentioned. What would the EU need to do to regain grounds in North Macedonia and make the EU accession process credible? You're talking about guarantees. Could you be a little bit more specific and tell us what would then convince a little bit more the citizens in North Macedonia of the support of the EU, sometimes against some of its member states when they abuse their prerogatives?
First, we have to make the distinction that although the level of support has decreased to 60%, as you mentioned, I would say it's not that we have more anti-Europeans, but as I previously mentioned, this was a highly emotional issue, so this is kind of emotional reaction. So once we would have certain deliverable or positive momentum, positive breakthrough, these numbers would increase. But this situation really hit the citizens quite emotional, I must say. So the only thing to have a breakthrough, to have certain visible and tangible deliveries on behalf of the EU. We are now on the 20th anniversary of the Thessaloniki summit. What has happened? Nothing. So there are various grounds and all even various actors even inside the country that are trying to benefit from this and spreading this various kinds of disinformation, even propaganda, and also foreign actors. They're taking advantage of this kind of situation, further dividing the society, further flowing distrust among the population. And actually there are various grounds which sound or seem reasonable for the citizens. And the only breakthrough would be to have as many possible high-level visits, but also not just having meetings with the politicians in the country, but also the foreign dignitaries, presidents, prime minister, ministers, whoever comes, to also have direct communication with the citizens, to have this kind of direct messaging to the citizens. It's much different when all those foreign politicians also have some time to speak with certain group. We had several recent visits in the past half year, let's say. It was the German president, the Austrian president, who actually extended their program. So they met various stakeholders in the Skopje Bazaar, in Ohrid, with the representatives of startups, of youth organizations and everybody. And they had the opportunity to talk to them and tell them also their views, their concerns. And it was much different than when people see the messages in the news. And even people are sometimes sick because in our media, mostly negative news prevails. So some even try to avoid watching the news in order not to feel this kind of additional negative energy. You know, the level of even how media works, and even also the level of media literacy is quite challenging in the Balkans.
Mhm. So more engagement from representatives from the member states showing their support not only to the government but also to citizens in North
And
Macedonia.
it's not only from the member states, so it's a joint effort. It's EU institutions, so visibility, presence, and direct communication with the citizens, the representatives of the EU member states, and of course, we as candidate countries, we also have the obligation to properly communicate the whole process and everything with our citizens. And this accession process is, of course, not only the a process that is being done between certain administration here in Brussels. We have to connect our societies as well. So presence from all the member states on various levels is very important. For example, just in the light of the forthcoming Spanish EU Council presidency, we held the first bilateral North Macedonia-Spain think tank forum. And hopefully we will have in future we're discussing now also for this kind of lateral France, North Macedonia, I think the forum, even with the Vision Group of countries, also to connect the think tanks, the NGOs between the North Macedonia and the EU member states, because we have to connect the societies. Even on the Prespa forum, for example, now, which took place just a few days ago, we had a huge panel on which we had representatives of various, almost half of Europe. And we're talking about modalities of enhanced regional cooperation and bilateral cooperation, representative from the Nordic Council, from the Baltic region, from France, Visegrad countries, also from the region. So we have to connect all the elements of the society on our way to do it. I think it's the best way.
And that's the concrete one, so to regain ground. Filip, there are thoughts about right now, because of the geopolitical context and the changing geographies of enlargement, with Ukraine and Moldova receiving the candidate status. There are thoughts to revamp the accession policy once more. We had already a series of revision of this policy, but now we would need something else, obviously. Now, the dogma in Brussels proclaims that the accession process is based on individual merits. Yet it's not mainly because of a lack of merit that North Macedonia has been blocked for 30 years. It had nothing to do, or very little to do, with merit for that matter. And in fact, beyond just North Macedonia, we see that the accession process quite often is disrupted by bilateral disputes. And that is something which goes a little bit out of the hands. Then we are not talking anymore about merits, but very much about harsh politics. We see that with Serbia and Kosovo too. What should the EU do, or how should the EU approach bilateral issues in the region, or in the case with Bulgaria and North Macedonia, in your opinion? How can it make sure that these bilateral issues are not disrupting the EU accession process? How to include that in the thoughts we are having about revamping the EU accession policy?
The thing is, we shouldn't focus on the bilateral issues, and we should have them out of the whole negotiation process. They should run in parallel, because politicizing these issues and connecting with the mayor reform agenda, it's a problem. It's not going to bring us anywhere, because instead of focusing all the efforts on the real reforms, the alignment with the EU acquis, and concrete reforms of institutions and other necessary reforms, we have to waste time and energy on also damage management of certain aftershocks that come out after incidents out of bilateral nations that might appear. And actually, this kind of things exist in every country, even kind of bilateral disputes or unresolved issues, but it has never been put high on the agenda. But countries cooperate and work, wasting energy on this, or putting it at in the front, will not bring us anywhere. Because even if you see the political situation in Bulgaria, the results of the elections, how it went, it just destabilizes the country, because the citizens of these countries of both countries wants to see progress, wants to see reform, better conditions for investments, better economic standard, and then so we should focus on reform. And on the other hand, having into consideration how the Prespa agreement was dealt, and this kind of positive and pragmatic approach that has been created by the both governments. I mean, we had in the meanwhile the change of government after Tsipras, of course, Nea Demokratia, but also this kind of positive and pragmatic approach, and that will continue. Not that we don't have issues that are lagging behind or unresolved, but for certain issues, the right momentum is necessary. So having this kind of pragmatic approach, not putting pressure, just waiting for proper momentum or a proper time, I think it's the best way. And the most important role of the governments and in general the political elites in the countries is just to create a positive environment and not to create situations that might have some negative spillover effect. There was also a recent case where an exhibition of modern art in Thessaloniki, Greece, took place, and the Golden Dome representatives actually were live streaming attack on this, and there was an incident. And actually, the thing was that in the Greek media, there was generally a positive and unbiased reporting, and this is just because there is not this kind of creation of negative rhetorics or provocative rhetorics between the two governments. The two governments are trying to bring positive energy and optimism in how the issues will be dealt. And in future, of course, we will have a lot of challenges. We all know, but the thing is to remain positive and to create a ground for further positive outcomes, not to create instead negative atmosphere, because it won't bring us anywhere.
Thank you a lot. Thanks for sharing these thoughts with us. And well, we hope that we will welcome you in Paris and contribute a little bit to linking a little bit, as you mentioned, the citizens and civil society forces and think tanks, the Fondation Jean-Jaurès, and with our North Macedonian friends. Thank you, Filip.
Thank you, Florent. And actually, since I've been in Paris, and one of the first meetings during the political consultations was the meeting with the think tanks, even facilitated by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of France, which is really committed to the enlargement process. Maybe now it's the time to have this kind of think tank meeting in North Macedonia, and I would be more than welcome to welcome you here in the ministry.
Thank you. We'll stay in touch. Goodbye.